The band Highly Suspect releases their fifth album today, As Above, So Below. The anticipated album tour begins on July 24th in Memphis, Tennessee. That show and the following two cities, St. Louis and Chicago, are already sold out. I had the opportunity to chat with Rich Meyer, the bassist of the band, about the album, the esoteric, and what we would tell our 15-year-old selves. Rich and I begin the conversation chatting about Mexico.
I haven't been to central Mexico, but I've been to Cabo a couple of times, and I've also been to the Yucatan. I went to Tulum and to Chichen Itza and Chetumal. It's one of my favorite places to go. I haven't gone there at a professional capacity, but I really do love Mexico. We had some festivals booked earlier this year, but we had to cancel them. I had an injured pinky finger. A lot better now, but I had to take several months off of playing because I broke this tendon right here. I had to wrap it. I had to spend several months like that. So we weren't able to play the Mexican shows actually because of me. I also wanted to let you know that we have a song on the upcoming album called Mexico, and it's about Mexico. Johnny wrote the lyrics about what he imagines Mexico to be as a place that he really wants to go to at some point. He's never actually been to Mexico, and that's kind of like what the song is about how badly he really wants to get there.
It's a magical place. Every day I feel like is an adventure here. And speaking of creating things, I've been making music for the better part of what, 20 some odd years?
Yeah.
Do you have a specific song where either you were kind of the one who took the lead on that or what you contributed to it that made you feel like, God damn, I am a rock star?
I actually don't feel like I'm a rock star. I'm just
Really?
a musician, and I have found myself in this position of in a band with people who I feel like are rock stars. I don't really view myself that way. I don't really like to get fucked up. I don't party. I'm not up all night, going and being social and stuff. I'm actually kind of more stick to myself. I live in Nashville and I do have friends here, and I occasionally I'll go out and do stuff. For the most part, I just kind of hang out at my house. I like to work out. I like to play video games. I like to read books. I like to shoot guns. I just do all sorts of solitary activities. And the people that I view as rock stars are always going out and being social and doing things with other musicians and doing lots of drugs and getting fucked up all the time and being a big personality on social media and on the stage and having lots to say and being a main character, if you will. And I just don't feel like I'm that at all. But to answer the first part of your question, there are a few songs in our discography that I pretty much wrote and performed completely by myself. And I do sing a little bit. I'm able to do songs by myself. There's a song called Arizona on MCID album. And then there's also another song on Midnight Demon Club. It's called The Wild Eyed Sun. And I did those songs by myself, but they don't make me feel like a rock star.
Really?
No, they really don't.
When is your birthday? I have to ask you that.
May 2nd.
You're a Taurus.
Yeah.
The thing about Tauruses that I really love, I call them the Snorlax of the zodiac. Y'all like to be comfortable. You like to eat good food. You like to be in a space that feels comfortable to you. No nonsense. I am who I am. And obviously that comes from the fixed sign. And also it's an earth sign. I don't know if you resonate with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm 100% relate to that. I spend a lot of time with my dog, and I spend a lot of time with my girlfriend. I talk to my family members a lot. I'm an investor. I like to trade stocks and crypto and precious metals. I don't really have enough money to get into the real estate game, but I've always thought that was interesting. I'm just not a rock star, what you would think a rock star would do. I don't really do any of that stuff.
Lately, I've been thinking so much about public personas because Paris Hilton is someone who fooled everyone and made us feel like, oh, she's this dumb person, but it's all a character. And it's so wild to see her sometimes where she can just turn it on and off. Some people have that ability. They can be very private people while also simultaneously showing a lot of themselves, or at least this catered image. But there's people who create that don't even want to deal with that. Everyone's different and everyone creates for different reasons. We talked about astrology a little bit. Are you someone who kind of believes in the esoteric, or are you more of a hard logic guy?
No, like, I mean, I'm definitely a very pragmatic person in practice, but my girlfriend reads my tarot. She has me pull a tarot card, every once in a while, or she'll do a reading, and I'm always kind of like, oh, this is interesting, I can actually see how this relates to my actual life. I've never heard anything about Tauruses that it didn't relate to.
Hmm.
Yeah, I've always thought it was interesting, and stuff relating to my zodiac sign is pretty legit. Like, I definitely fit the bill of a Taurus, like, absolutely.
I just find it all super fascinating. Do you mind if I
You want
pull?
to do mine? Go right ahead.
Perfect. Let's see. Tell me when. I'm just shuffling and moving them around.
Uh, that one.
Okay, perfect. Ooh, so we got the magician card reversed. So the magician is part of what's the major arcana. So it's like part of the life journey of coming to terms that might be obstacles and just your creative process, your life, what have you. And this one is saying that maybe at times you are someone that maybe has a lot of creative ideas, but it's how to execute them. Like that might be something you might want to work on or see if, your communication style with your creating is difficult because what this is giving is you have very much been able to create and do the things that you want to do. And this also kind of resonates. You might be like, well, I'm not a rock star, but maybe you're Joe Schmo on the streets like, that guy's a rock star. And I feel like sometimes it's that imposter syndrome when you're around people that you think are so much more ahead or talented. Even, just like your colleagues like are very different than you, so you can't always relate. But I think you might want to dig deeper to your creative attributes and the things that you bring to the table, because I think that sometimes when we don't give ourselves the space to create in a way that feels really like authentic and maybe even a little scary, it holds us back. Does that make sense? Does it resonate?
Yeah, 100%. I have music in my head almost all the time, and
Mhm.
whether it's a song that I'm familiar with or I haven't heard in a long time, I'll have to put it on. A song that I haven't listened to or thought about in years, it'll just like randomly pop up and I'll have to listen to it. Or sometimes I'll like make up a whole thing. It's almost always good. I've never invented a song in my imagination that I thought sucked. What's difficult is taking that song from my imagination and turning it into a real thing. I've managed to do it a handful of times in my life, but like, I would say 99% of all the songs that I've imagined just kind of went back into the ether and I wasn't able to use them or recreate them.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that because I've been very obsessed with this theory of life. There have been so many different instances of one person will have an idea for something, maybe even created an outline for like a book or something. And then for whatever reason, they got busy, they couldn't focus on it, and they stopped. Years later, they might meet someone who actually finished the book. And when you compare them, the characters are similar, the storyline might be similar. And the fact that this happens a lot kind of just makes me feel like ideas are like living things that if we don't give it the opportunity to bloom, it finds someone else who can.
I've heard plenty of artists like David Bowie and the Beatles talking about how like we don't actually write the songs, we receive the songs and then we transpose them into the physical world. And that I always resonated with that. I'm like, yeah, that makes perfect sense to me, like a song already exists and you're like an antenna, and you're like receiving the message, as an artist.
And
Easier said than done. It's a very difficult thing to do.
No, very much so. And with like any type of group project, music especially, I feel like when everyone else is in the thralls of it and maybe you're not there, you're kind of the burden or like the one who's kind of dragging it along. Your bandmate Johnny had some thoughts about the last album that you did. And I wonder if there are ever times where, as the person who's watching your bandmate, like, critique and have these opinions of your work that you've all put together, do you feel like people should speak candidly about their art and when they're unhappy with it? Or is that something that maybe it's like we should hold back and then just maybe put that energy into the next project?
I think it's totally fair to be honest how we feel about what we've created. That's an important part of the process. We have to be honest with our art moving forward as well. We're all like super excited about this new album. Everybody that worked on it, everyone who's a part of it is excited about it. And that's a really good thing. And we're all grateful for that. The last two albums, we have all really suffered in the creation. There's been a lot of experimentation, there's been a lot of internal struggles. Basically, the issue was we weren't able to work together, without pointing fingers or, getting into specifics. We really weren't able to collaborate. on the last two records, and it really shows. I think that the first two albums are great. They're really good. And MCID, Midnight Demon Club are like okay. They've got great songs, sure. I think for the most part, like they don't have the sauce that the first two albums did. And it's just because we weren't really working together. And on this new album, I took a stance. If we're not doing this together, if we're not working together as a team, we're not doing it. I'm not going to release more music that is not us collaborating. To me, it's obvious that's what the people want, and that's what sounds the best. If we're not doing that, then it's not happening.
Again, a group project, which is what a band is, you really do need everyone to be on the same page to allow their influences and what's like speaking to them to all collectively come together. Otherwise, it's just a modge podge. You've been with the band since the beginning. I used to work at 1057 The Point, and you were one of our ho-ho shows one year, and then you did Point Fest the year after.
Yeah.
That album came out in what, 2015 was your debut?
I think it
Yeah.
was 15. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know how often you go to St. Louis. Do you remember anything that particularly stood out when you were there?
I've been to St. Louis a lot. I definitely noticed first few times that I went to St. Louis that there is a local pride. Most St. Louisans are quite proud of where they're from. There's a lot of camaraderie there, more so than in other places, I would say. That's like really cool. That was what I took away from the place, was that like people that live there are pretty stoked about St. Louis. Whereas like, there's a lot of people that live in Los Angeles that are like, oh my God, Los Angeles sucks. And it's like, okay, well, this is where you've chosen to live though. Like, why do you hate it so much? Like type of thing. People have love-hate relationships with where they live. But I think there's a lot of people who live in St. Louis who just love it.
There's a lot of bang for your buck there. You're totally right. Like people from St. Louis, we love St. Louis. I miss it. It's home, but that contention people have for cities and other places, I think we have that in St. Louis, but we're more like only we can criticize it. But the reason that I mentioned St. Louis and everything is because Point Fest, the music scene that it does have there, whether locally or even on a larger scale, it is super supportive. And I've gone to shows like everywhere. And I'm always so impressed with just the love that St. Louis has for the musicians that do come, because a lot of people, they think it's just like city to kind of fly over on the way to Kansas City or Chicago. So love that you have some positive things to say about my hometown. I'm really thankful for your time. And the last question I have, I'm a big like be the person you needed when you were younger. If there's one piece of advice that you could give your 15-year-old self right now, what would it be?
Buy Bitcoin. Literally, if I had the opportunity to tell my 15-year-old self one thing, that would be it.
All right. Thank you again for just chatting with me for a little bit. I know y'all have new music coming out soon. When can we look forward to that? And do you have a favorite song on the album that you want us to know about?
So the album becomes available on July 19th. And I want everyone listening to this to check out Plastic Boxes. Thanks for having me.
Thank you again for listening. And you can catch Highly Suspect's latest album, As Above, So Below, everywhere that you listen to music. An update. Now the first 7 shows of the tour are sold out, including Memphis, Tennessee, St. Louis, Missouri, Chicago, Illinois, Flint, Michigan, Detroit, Michigan, Ashbury Park, New Jersey, and Brooklyn, New York. Catch them if you can. Thanks again. This was a project by Bex Carlos.